horrible. Then they go on to reproduce, have kids, their grandkids, compared to other people who came from grandparents who didn't have trauma in their lives, substance abuse, health problems, hang out in jail, very significant, I can't say very statistically significant, but there's evidence showing that human beings are affected by what happened to their grandparents prior to them reproducing. Genetic, I'm not going to say this, I'm not saying that we have proof of genetic changes. We can't go in and harvest everybody's genes, unless we have lots of money, but to do that study. But mice studies, I'll just summarize by this: traumatize a mouse with all sorts of horrible things. We traumatize mice in the lab all the time. But then you have stimulus for a traumatic event, like lights or bells or whistles or things like that, stimulus. But then let that mouse be traumatized, and then that mouse has a kid, and then the mouse that was whose parent was traumatized, that mouse will have another kid, and that grandchild mouse will react to the stimulus. Does that make sense? They actually will react. They'll be scared or traumatized by something that they've never experienced in their lives, but their grandparent was traumatized by that bell. Like, remember, you guys know, what's his name? Pavlov. Pavlov's response. It's that Pavlov thing where the response that you get from the stimulus happens in grandkids of mice. Correlate that with growing number of the reputation of traumatized populations that have grandchildren, and look at how they're doing in school, substance abuse, health problems, their own relationships. I'm just saying, kids who are victims of stuff like this because of the trauma, I'm hypothesizing big time here when I say probable genetic changes. Everybody see what I'm saying? Now, does it excuse behavior? That's a question for psychology class. When you guys go become mental health practitioners. Now, one of the reasons the Boy Scouts got busted big time was because they did such a good job of keeping records of their scoutmasters. But I don't mean to pick on the Boy Scouts, because they've had a long history of scoutmasters cruising around place to place, and once they get in trouble for molesting kids, they don't get thrown in jail, they go to another area. That doesn't happen anymore, hopefully, but they kept such good records, that's how they were busted. But don't kid yourself that other entities that don't keep good records aren't doing the same thing. Okay? I know it sounds pessimistic and cynical, but it's true. And then, being in the daycare, this happened, this is getting pretty old. With 2012, this is old. But this guy, trust me, this guy molested way more than 11. Yeah. I'm pretty sure he's like at least 35. I'm not supposed to tell you guys that. All right, so even though I don't mean to pick on any gender, but pedophiles are almost always males. Okay, so remember our little example, remember Mary Kay Letourneau? She's gotten bad press for years. I'm just gonna say this. I wouldn't say that she's a pedophile. She did something illegal, and maybe it was traumatic, and I am certainly not endorsing any kind of sexual activity with minors in high school if you're not a minor. I don't endorse any of that stuff. But I'm saying pedophiles tend to be male. You really, again, my experience, and I'm talking 12 years now, you just do not see females who are actual pedophiles doing all the things I was just talking about, okay? And I don't mean to pick on males, but I feel I can because I'm sitting up here a male. If I was a female, I probably wouldn't say it that way because all the guys would throw stuff at me. But that's just the truth. But the key I want you guys to know is they're familiar to the victims. They're not gonna just, pedophiles are not gonna just go up and snag people. Even those guys who drive up in vans and kidnap kids, which does happen, they're really not pedophiles. They're horrible people and they have psych problems. They should be, obliterated from the planet. However, those guys aren't pedophiles. And they're very smart, which makes them very difficult to catch. The victim is either afraid to tell, or they don't want the whatever bond or promise, or don't you care about me? You can trust me. This is our secret. That's the atmosphere the pedophiles created. And again, don't be thinking. I want you to call CPS, but don't be thinking that every pedophile always goes to jail. I can't even get out here. Okay. Last thing I want to talk about here, I'm not going to play this whole thing, just a little bit of it. Oh, in fact, you know what? I'm not going to play this. I'm not going to play this video. I'm going to go into this. This video right here is a very old video, and it has to do with this thing called Munchausen syndrome by proxy. When I say that, do you guys know what I'm talking about?
Exactly.
Okay. I'll post this video. Well, actually, I'm sorry. Just type in Munchausen on YouTube, and you guys can watch that. But basically, that video is a very old video of a 2020 segment of it's about 5 minutes long, of a family in Florida where the only way that they were able to figure out that this young girl actually was a victim of Munchausen syndrome hypoxia is the court, after many encounters with CPS over and over, the court yanked the kid and sent him to Cincinnati for a month. And every medical problem, many years of horrible chronic GI problems went away in about a week after being separated from the mom. That's the essence of Munchausen syndrome hypoxia. It's really complicated. It's probably way more common than we think it is. But the essence of Munchausen syndrome hypoxia is the parent, and again, back to my gender picking on, it's usually the mom, but not always, but usually the mom. For whatever reason, she is getting her needs met by getting her child, not necessarily to kill them, she really doesn't want to kill them. She wants to create an atmosphere where everyone's lavishing massive sympathy on her because she's working so hard to take care of that sick kid. It's the sympathy that she's getting from that. Sometimes I shouldn't say she, but the vast majority of people with Munchausen have that. The current term, everyone's trying to move out of Munchausen syndrome into this term called medical abuse, child medical abuse, because they're doing medical things and getting sometimes an actual diagnosis that's usually it's G-tubes and funky respiratory things because there's these mysterious things going on and no one can ever figure it out. The thing I want you to remember about it is hard to diagnose, and it's really difficult to get an actual disclosure. The only way it ever gets prosecuted is if there's a separation from child, from family, and the child gets a lot better. And that's really what it takes. Or you have video cameras in hospitals. That's the other way to get them. That's expensive too. All right, so last thing I want to say, then I promise to be done, I'll let the survey. Please don't leave because you got to do the survey. But I do have this one last rant. I promise it's the last soapbox, but I've been working on it a little bit. Who are these guys? Okay, now, I know there's this endangered species here in Idaho called the Democratic Party. But I think it's important for you guys to remember, I don't think professors should be spouting off their personal beliefs to their students. But you guys came to school for a reason, I hope, and that's to learn. I think you want to be nurses and do a good job with your lives, but one of these three guys is going to be governor. I'm pretty confident of that. I think most of you guys will agree. So they had a debate 2 days ago. This is actually an article about the debate, okay? And I'm not going to try to make my pointer. Maybe I can point this stuff out, maybe not. But here's my point on showing you guys this. These guys talked about issues, and I think, after living in Idaho for 12 years, I think the governor is pretty powerful. They may not actually introduce legislation, but they have a huge say because of the domination of one party in here, and the way things work. I'll just label it the good old boy network. There's a reason that there's three guys here. It's just the way it is. I don't, love it or hate it, that's the way it is. Okay, but here's what I want everybody to understand. There's three people. There's this guy named Tommy Alquist, there's the current Lieutenant Governor Brad Little, and then there's this guy, Raul Lebedar, one of our two congressmen, okay? He's running for governor. So they were asked some specific questions. There's two things I wanted to highlight here. Well, actually, there's really three. They're all opposed to abortion, okay? That's no surprise. However, one of them, Tommy Alquist, was incredibly vague about this new concept that keeps coming up about prosecuting women who have abortions. Should they be, there's actually, I think, a bill, I don't know if it was introduced, but it went to committee that would prosecute women. Any woman who has an abortion in Idaho could be prosecuted for first-degree murder and do whatever jail time that correlates with first-degree murder if you are found to have had an abortion, okay? Everybody heard that one? But they also debated, let me get here, I'm sorry, I couldn't. Oh, well, no, the guy who introduced the bill, not one of these three guys, but the actual legislator who introduced the bill did say that, yeah, that they should be put to death. But here's my point, okay? Now, I don't want to make it too long of a rant, but right here, the candidates were talking about the faith healing exemption, okay? This is my point. Everybody know what I'm talking about when I talk about faith healing exemption? I know my students who in my Wednesday group know exactly what I'm talking about here. Faith healing exemption. Should it be legal or not or should you be forced by law to take your children to receive medical care for what most people would determine to be a common illness that could lead to injury or death. Should that be legal, yes or no? So think about that in your head. You think, yeah, you guys all have your own sense of value here, but there's a lot of social factors in Idaho that maybe make that a gray area. So I want everybody to understand, since we're talking about child abuse, right now, if a child is sick, if a child is born and isn't breathing that well, or is turning pale, and for most of you guys, in fact, hopefully all you guys, if you see a child who looks like they're not doing too well and maybe needs some help, you would actually help them. In fact, I think you actually legally have to do that once you guys pass your test. Don't quote me on that. But you would do something about it. But right now in Idaho, parents don't have to. And again, I don't mean to pick on them too much, but there's a certain religious entity, they're called the Followers of Christ. They're around, so this is right about. But even though I'm mentioning their name, there's a whole bunch of other ones that I just don't know much about. But in their religious teachings, it's taught that essentially I would say it's God's will what happens. And you're going to be in big trouble from the church if you take that child to the hospital. Obviously, none of these kids are ever born in the hospital, and therefore they don't get a lot of prenatal care. So right here where I'm going with this. They don't get a lot of prenatal care, and they're born in the hospital, or no, they're not born in the hospital, and maybe they'll die, maybe they won't. And then let's say they live, and then as they get older, maybe there's going to be health issues, and if they're treated or not, no one's going to be in trouble if they're not treated. Everybody see where I'm going with this? Okay, I think that's debatable, and we can talk about that, but that's not what I want to talk about. What I want to mention is, that keeps coming up for a vote. About 17 years ago in Oregon, it did pass, because Oregon, as a community, and I'm not saying everyone in Oregon, but a significant number of people just got tired of all these dead kids showing up wherever they showed up. Not necessarily in the hospital ER, but there's dead bodies around, people get mad. So then, Oregon passed a law, and the general consensus is a lot of people who follow this faith drifted into Idaho because of our different legal system here. But every year, this faith healing exemption comes up because there are a lot of people in Idaho who feel like it should be a crime not to take your kids in to get medical care if they need it. Okay, so just so you guys know, all three candidates weighed in on this. This guy, Tommy Alquist, he's actually a doctor, said even though he thinks that we have individual rights in Idaho, he, as a doctor, has seen too much horror. He thinks that should be illegal. He would be in favor of getting rid of the exemption and making it a prosecutable offense to not take your kids in for medical care. The current lieutenant governor has also said the same thing, although he's kind of a little more vague about it because he's really very emphatic, saying that we have choices here. And this guy was very clear, saying, in Idaho we have a choice, and these people should not be prosecuted. We should have the choice to do everything. Everybody see where I'm going? So anyway, I don't think it's up to me to spout my personal beliefs, because I'm sure you guys know. Yeah, I'm imagining you guys actually know where I stand on this issue. Yeah. And it may surprise you, but here's what I'm going to say. I'm just going to say it. Maybe I'll shock you. I actually think that if a family, and let me get ready to say this, if a family, because of their devout faith, is willing to watch their child die, they should be able to do it. Okay, now that maybe that shocks you, because I care about kids, but what I'm saying is, if they're willing to let their kids die, then I say more power to them. That's not how I feel, but if they want to do it, then here's my point, and this is where I've actually seen this a lot. They need to walk that walk, and they need to watch their child suffer, and they need to watch that child die, because this happens. This really does happen. Some of you guys know I'm on the Canyon County Fatality Review Board, and every quarter, every 3 or 4 months, there's another baby, there's another kid. And I want to remind you, the only kids that we know about are the ones that we find out about, not the ones that are happening. Don't kid yourself about all the dead babies all over Idaho that are, every month or two, there's more babies dying, because home birth, no record of parents having Social Security cards, no identification, no involvement with government whatsoever. They're totally off the grid. I say that's fine, let them do it until, and here's my point, until they decide to engage with society. And this is what happens periodically. This happened last spring, a year ago, in the NICU. I'm not going to violate HIPAA, I'm going to be careful. But when parents actually demonstrate normal maternal and paternal instincts and actually are like, oh shit, I actually care about my kid, I'm gonna do something about it, and they call 911. Or they grab that kid and they get over to the ER, like a lot of people would do. And I know there's not any followers in here, because there's no way a follower of the Christ person is gonna come to nursing school. You couldn't actually do this, okay? So I'm picking on these guys, but I'm really not. If they have the ability to watch their kid die, then I say that's fine. That's literally Darwin's principles working right there. The problem is if they want to engage with society, then we have the conflict. Everybody see where I'm going with that? So if people want to engage with society, like, actually have 911 and have someone collect your garbage and, have streets and plumbing and, I'm going on. If you want to engage with society, you need to engage with society. But the last thing I'll say is this is where I just hate hypocrisy. I don't like it when I'm a hypocrite probably every Thursday here, I'm sorry. But if you're going to say that we have choice on what we do with our kids, I'm picking on this guy, I'm sorry, but yet no woman has the choice of what to do with her reproductive habits as far as choice on abortion or not, no matter what the case, rape, incest, blah, 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 all that stuff. That's lunatic hypocrisy. So I'm totally violating my own ethics standards when I'm not trying to tell you guys who to vote for, but I just want to emphasize that you don't kid yourself that the politics of our state don't affect the health care of the people you're going to be working with. One of these three guys is going to have heavy influence on putting moms in jail or not, or whether kids are getting abused or not, as far as, I could go on and on about resources to health and welfare and CPS caseworkers and how much resources they need. But that's a really big deal to me, and I'm hoping that you guys can hear what I'm saying. Does that make sense? All right, I'm gonna walk out the door. I'm gonna ask that everybody who is, okay, let me do this. Anybody who had clinical with Serena or Darcy over at Luke's, if you had clinical at Luke's on Wednesdays, you don't need to stay. But everybody else who had Karen Goddard on Wednesdays or Fridays, or me on Fridays, please, please, please stay and fill out these surveys.